before Iron Man shook hands with Hulk or Rocket Raccoon traded insults with. Thor, there were cartoon crossovers that defied logic, rewrote rules, and created childhood mayhem. These forgotten mashups from the 60s to the 80s brought universes together in bizarre, brilliant, and often chaotic ways. Get ready for 20 jaw-dropping cartoon crossovers that happened long before the MCU even existed. Number 20. Popeye Meets the Man Who Hated Laughter, 1972. In a one-hour animated TV special sponsored by the Saturday Superstar movie lineup King Features Syndicate, pulled off a crossover nobody saw coming. Popeye, Blondie Beetle, Bailey, Snuffy Smith, the Phantom, and even Flash Gordon appeared together in one surreal narrative. The plot revolved around a villain named Professor Morbid Grimsby, who kidnaps all the world's funny characters in an effort to wipe out laughter from the planet. The cartoon opens like any Popeye short, but quickly veers into meta territory as dozens of classic comic strip characters converge. Voice actors scrambled to replicate decades of personalities, and despite its awkward pacing, the special holds a peculiar charm. Watching Popeye team up with Mandrake the Magician to rescue Dagwood and Blondie is pure crossover insanity. What made this oddity stand out was the unapologetic tone. It never explained why these characters shared a world or how universes collided. It just happened. For kids tuning in on a Saturday morning, it was like watching newspaper comics come alive in one giant shared world. Long before shared cinematic universes, Popeye and Company got there first on a broadcast that aired once, then practically vanished from memory. Number 19. Scooby-Doo meets Sonny and Cher, 1972. In another entry from the new Scooby-Doo movies series, Scooby and the gang pulled into a mysterious resort, only to find it run by none other than Sonny and Cher. Yes, really. The legendary musical duo voiced themselves and helped solve a haunted mystery involving disappearing guests and a phony ghost lurking in the shadows. What makes this crossover memorable is how well it blends absurdity with pop culture synergy. Sonny delivers deadpan zingers while Cher's sarcasm outpaces even Velma's snark. There's a scene where Scooby and Cher accidentally team up, and it plays out like pure psychedelic slapstick. Somehow it works. This wasn't about logic or even narrative flow, it was about spectacle. Hanna-Barbera knew Scooby was a household name and began mixing him with celebrities like Batman, the Addams Family, and Don Knotts. Sonny and Cher's animated appearance came at the height of their fame, making it perfect marketing chaos. The special aired once and then disappeared for decades due to music rights. But fans who grew up with it never forgot how surreal it felt watching a ghost-chasing Great Dane trade one-liners with rock and roll royalty. If you thought Guardians of the Galaxy was weird, wait until you see Scooby crashing Sonny and Cher's vacation. Number 18. Yogi's Ark Lark, 1972. Before environmental storytelling became mainstream, Hanna-Barbera launched a crossover that combined eco-awareness with cartoon chaos. Yogi's Ark Lark was a primetime TV special that united Yogi Bear, Boo Boo, Huckleberry Hound, Snagglepuss, Quick Draw McGraw, and a dozen other stars in a floating ark searching for a pollution-free paradise. The plot felt like Noah's Ark meets Captain Planet. Tired of pollution, crime, and chaos in the human world, the animal crew builds a massive flying ark and sets off on a journey to find the perfect place. Every destination they reach turns out flawed in some moral or ecological way. By the end, they realize the solution is to fix the world they already live in. While the message was sincere, the cartoon was an insane melting pot of personalities. Watching Top Cat argue with Magilla Gorilla while they navigate thunderstorms is Saturday morning gold. The fact that so many characters had distinct tones and styles only made the chaos more entertaining. This crossover led directly to Yogi's Gang the following year, turning this one-shot into a shared universe pilot. It was one of Hanna-Barbera's most ambitious ensemble experiments and a surprisingly early attempt at cartoon activism, wrapped in punchlines and pratfalls. Number 17. The Banana Splits Adventure Hour, 1968. Imagine if a rock band in animal costumes hosted your Saturday morning lineup and then jumped into serialized live-action and cartoon adventures. That was the Banana Splits Adventure Hour. While not a crossover in the modern sense, it functioned as an anthology variety show combining several different Hanna-Barbera segments, including The Arabian Nights, The Three Musketeers, and Danger Island, all wrapped in surreal interstitials with the titular costumed band. The Banana Splits themselves, Fleagle Bingo Drooper and Snorky, would goof around in theme park-like settings between episodes and sometimes even get animated themselves. In many episodes, characters from other shows would appear during these segments or be teased in upcoming features. The format created a bizarre, interconnected world where sword-wielding adventurers, jungle explorers, and groovy mascots all existed side by side. The real magic of this crossover was tone. You could go from slapstick to pulp adventure to psychedelic musical numbers in minutes. It was as if someone melted all genres together and threw glitter on top. The show's chaotic energy and fusion of formats made it one of the earliest experiments in multimedia crossover presentation. Years later, the idea would be echoed in cartoons like Animaniacs, but the Banana Splits got there first in all its sugar-fueled glory. Number 16. The ABC Saturday Superstar Movie, 1972. The ABC Saturday Superstar Movie wasn't a single cartoon, but a bizarre experiment in cartoon crossover and spin-off culture. It was an anthology of one-hour animated TV movies that mixed sitcom characters, live-action shows, and even comic strip properties. At times it was a sandbox for testing out full series, but just as often it created Frankenstein-like collisions between unrelated worlds. Episodes included Yogi's Ark-Lark the Brady Kids with a magical Mina bird lost in space in animated form, and even Tabitha and Adam and the Clown Family, a crossover of Bewitched and a never-heard-from-again circus crew. Some shows, like Will the Real Jerry Lewis Please Sit Down, spun out of the project, while others vanished forever. The unifying theme was unpredictability. Viewers never knew if they'd be getting musical numbers, magical hijinks, or superhero parodies. While some episodes stood alone, others heavily referenced characters and plots from live-action shows. This created a confusing but strangely compelling pre-cinematic universe atmosphere. Looking back, it feels like a dry run for modern crossover IP strategy, but instead of Avengers-level coordination, it was chaos stitched with laugh tracks. It might not have lasted long, but for a brief moment, the ABC Saturday Superstar Movie made your Saturday morning cartoon lineup feel like flipping through the entire TV guide in 30 seconds. Number 15. Scooby-Doo meets Laurel and Hardy, 1972. As part of the crossover-centric new Scooby-Doo movies, the episode featuring Laurel and Hardy was both a tribute and a time warp. The legendary slapstick duo had long since passed away, but were resurrected in animated form to guest star alongside the Mystery Inkward Gang in a haunted theater storyline. The animated Laurel and Hardy weren't just cameos, they were full-on participants in the mystery. Their classic routines were recreated in animated slapstick, while Shaggy, Scooby, and Velma reacted to their hijinks in real time. The plot involved a theater plagued by a phantom who was sabotaging performances. Naturally, the ghost turned out to be someone in disguise, but getting there involved enough pratfalls to fill a silent film reel. What made this crossover so compelling was its ambition. It attempted to bridge silent-era comedy with modern cartoon sensibilities. Hanna-Barbera went as far as designing the animated Hardy and Laurel to resemble their real-world counterparts while using voice actors to approximate their iconic delivery. This was not just fan service, it was a time capsule. It taught a new generation of kids who Laurel and Hardy were, while giving longtime fans a dose of nostalgia through Scooby-Doo's haunted laugh formula. In a way, it was a comedy handshake across the decades. Number 14. Laugh Olympics, 1977. In one of the wildest crossover experiments ever animated, Laugh Olympics united nearly every Hanna-Barbera character from the 1960s and 1970s into a chaotic cartoon parody of the Olympic Games. Yogi Bear, Scooby-Doo, Huckleberry Hound, and even lesser-knowns like Blue Falcon and Captain Caveman all competed in absurd sporting events around the globe. The format split characters into three competing teams. The Scooby-Doobies were mostly mystery-solving heroes. The Yogi Yahooies featured the more wholesome characters. And the really rottens, of course, were the scheming villains. Every episode followed their rivalry as they raced, wrestled, and cheated their way through events like ski jumps and pie-eating contests. This was not just a crossover, it was a Saturday morning universe builder. The writing balanced slapstick comedy with tongue-in-cheek sports commentary, making it as much fun for adults as kids. Characters who'd never shared a screen before suddenly became teammates or rivals. Laugh Olympics gave every cartoon fan the ultimate what-if scenario. What if Wally Gator had to pole vault against Grape Ape? What if Dick Dastardly and Muttley were judged by Snagglepuss? The answers were hilarious. It was a pre-MCU version of Avengers, Endgame, but everyone brought bananas instead of weapons. Number 13. The Hanna-Barbera All-Star Comedy Ice Revue, 1978. If Laugh Olympics was chaotic, the Hanna-Barbera All-Star Comedy Ice Revue was pure madness on skates. A live-action and animated TV special aired on NBC, it featured beloved cartoon characters like Yogi Bear, Fred Flintstone, Huckleberry Hound, and Scooby-Doo interacting with real-world figure skaters in an ice-capade extravaganza. The animated segment saw the characters planning a big ice show while dodging disasters and slapstick mishaps. But the real spectacle was the live performance, where costumed performers dressed as the characters skated and danced in choreographed routines. It was a surreal experience watching Fred Flintstone twirl on ice while Yogi and Boo Boo tried not to crash the rink. This special was a crossover in every sense. It bridged animation and live action, cartoon fantasy and physical performance, all with the production style of a 1970s variety show. It also demonstrated Hanna-Barbera's reach into mainstream family entertainment outside Saturday mornings. While it has never seen an official re-release, number 12, The Scooby-Doo Dynomutt Hour, 1976. In 1976, Hanna-Barbera decided it was time to merge two of their most popular dog-themed series into a single animated hour. The result was the Scooby-Doo Dynomutt Hour, a strange but endearing fusion that placed cowardly Scooby-Doo next to the superheroic, malfunction-prone Dynomutt and his human partner Blue Falcon. Each hour-long block included a standard Scooby-Doo mystery and a Dynomutt superhero case. But what turned this into a crossover event was the increasing number of shared cameos and plot threads. Eventually, Scooby and the Mystery Inc. gang teamed up with Blue Falcon and Dynomutt to battle villains together. The tone shifted wildly between slapstick horror and campy superhero antics. The chemistry between Shaggy and Dynomutt was especially delightful, both being nervous, goofy messes in high-stress situations. Meanwhile, Blue Falcon and Fred acted like stern older brothers trying to keep everyone focused. The hour proved surprisingly successful and helped cement the crossover formula as a staple of Hanna-Barbera's strategy. These two worlds, once separate, now felt like pieces of a larger cartoon universe. In an age before post-credit scenes and shared franchises, the Scooby-Doo Dynomutt Hour was an early peek into what animated continuity could actually look like. Number 11. Casper and the Angels, 1979. In a bizarre blend of ghost comedy and futuristic sci-fi, Hanna-Barbera launched Casper and the Angels, which placed the friendly ghost in a setting straight out of Charlie's Angels and the Jetsons. The show featured two female space cops named Minnie and Maxie patrolling a Jetson-style metropolis with their spectral assistant Casper. What made it a crossover was its reuse of visual and thematic elements from other Hanna-Barbera shows. The futuristic setting echoed The Jetsons, complete with hover cars, robots, and sleek space stations. Casper, of course, originally belonged to the Harvey Toons universe, but this show reimagined him interacting with sci-fi crime fighters and various wacky characters that wouldn't have been out of place in Galaxy Goof-Ups or Space Ghost. Although not a traditional crossover of named stars, it was a genre crossover that blended Hanna-Barbera's classic spooky mascot with their expanding futuristic lineup. The animation even recycled backgrounds and sound effects from earlier sci-fi tunes. Despite its odd concept, the show tackled gender roles, clumsy authority, and anti-bullying messages, wrapped in slapstick and groan-worthy puns. It only lasted one season, but its strange mix of ghostly innocence and space-age action left behind a time capsule of how far Hanna-Barbera was willing to stretch character placement in the name of crossover storytelling. Number 10. The Jetsons Meet the Flintstones, 1987. Although technically outside the core golden age of crossovers, this 1987 TV movie marked the culmination of Hanna-Barbera's crossover ambition. The Jetsons Meet the Flintstones did what every fan had dreamed of for decades. It united the Stone Age with the Space Age in a time-traveling clash of cultures that was both hilarious and surreal. The plot was simple chaos. Elroy Jetson builds a time machine that accidentally sends his family back to prehistoric bedrock. Meanwhile, Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble end up in the Jetsons' futuristic world. Both families struggle hilariously to adapt. Jane Jetson complains about no automation in the Stone Age, while Wilma gets overwhelmed by robots. This wasn't just a crossover, it was an event. Airing in prime time, the special was promoted like a major network holiday movie. It brought together two of the most iconic families in cartoon history, and finally delivered on years of speculation from fans about who would win in a bowling match or how George Jetson would handle a dinosaur car. Although critically mixed, the film's ratings proved nostalgia and curiosity were powerful forces. Before the MCU gave us Thor and Iron Man sharing the screen, Fred and George did it first, using rock phones and flying saucers to break cartoon barriers. Number 9. Yogi's Space Race, 1978. Yogi Bear had already raced through forests and dodged park rangers, but in Yogi's Space Race, he became a full-blown space pilot competing across the galaxy in rocket-powered vehicles. This Hanna-Barbera cartoon threw together an interstellar race featuring classic characters like Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, Jabberjaw, and even obscure picks like Quack Up and Buford. The show was clearly inspired by the earlier success of Wacky Races, but with a sci-fi twist. Every episode featured absurd obstacles, mechanical malfunctions, sabotage, and cosmic detours. And unlike earlier cartoons, Yogi's Space Race connected these characters as if they always lived in the same universe, implying an unspoken multiverse of talking animals and oddball racers. The standout element was how effortlessly the show merged unrelated franchises. Jabberjaw, originally a standalone underwater character, suddenly shared the screen with land-based legends like Yogi and Huckleberry. Each racer had their own personality and gimmick, but they all somehow worked together in this shared galaxy of animated lunacy. Despite lasting only a single season, the show spun off other series like The Buford Files and Galaxy Goof-Ups. It proved that even decades before crossover blockbusters, Hanna-Barbera had already mastered the chaotic art of blending timelines, tones, and cartoon laws of physics into one Saturday morning fever dream. Number 8. Scooby-Doo meets Batman and Robin, 1972. In one of the most iconic crossover episodes of the new Scooby-Doo movies, the gang didn't just solve a spooky mystery, they teamed up with the Caped Crusader himself. Scooby-Doo meets Batman and Robin brought Gotham's finest crime fighters into Hanna-Barbera's haunted universe, and the result was unforgettable. The special aired as 2 episodes. The first involved the Joker and the Penguin trying to steal a flying suit from a toy company. The second featured a plot to ruin a charity event with the same clownish villains. While the tone was sillier than most Batman adaptations, it was a faithful nod to the 1960s Adam West series, complete with exaggerated voices, utility belts, and hammy dialogue. Seeing Batman and Robin animated in Scooby's world was jarring in the best way. The gang tried to keep up while Batman stayed calm and analytical. Meanwhile, Robin delivered endless puns, and Scooby bumbled his way into saving the day. Shaggy's reactions to Batman's gadgets were pure gold. This crossover opened the floodgates for more celebrity and superhero mashups. It proved Hanna-Barbera could pull characters from wildly different genres and make them work together. Long before Justice League cartoons became the norm, Scooby-Doo gave Batman a ghost to chase and a sandwich to share. Number 7. The Fonz and the Happy Days. Gang meet Laverne and Shirley, 1980. By the dawn of the 1980s, animation was colliding with live-action nostalgia. The Fonz and the Happy Days gang was already a strange sci-fi spin-off that sent Fonzie, Richie, Ralph Malph, and a girl from the future named Cupcake on time-traveling escapades. But things got even weirder when Laverne and Shirley, also animated and voiced by their real-life actresses, joined the chaos. In several episodes, the two shows intertwined. Laverne and Shirley's animated spin-off, which had them working as Army recruits in a cartoon boot camp, would sometimes sync up with the Happy Days gang's adventures. Shared worlds, characters, and cameos turned these two separate live-action sitcom legacies into an unofficial animated crossover universe. The stories were surreal. Fonzie rode a talking dog-shaped time machine named Mr. Cool. Laverne and Shirley got into slapstick messes that made their original sitcom look like Shakespeare. But somehow, the crossover energy worked. It was like watching TV Land do acid. This strange animated experiment didn't last long, but it deserves recognition for blending beloved sitcom stars with ridiculous genre plots. Before Doctor Strange traveled the multiverse, Fonzie was already there, snapping his fingers through time with Laverne tagging along for the ride. Number 6. Super Friends, 1973. Long before the Justice League became a gritty, cinematic franchise, Super Friends offered Saturday morning audiences a colorful and campy version of superhero teamwork. Debuting in 1973, the show brought together Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman, later joined by Flash, Green Lantern, and even lesser-known heroes like Apache Chief and Samurai. This was the ultimate superhero crossover for kids. It wasn't just an adaptation, it was a shared universe that treated DC Comics' entire roster as playable parts of a weekly adventure. And the show didn't stop with heroes. Villains like Lex Luthor, the Legion of Doom, and the Joker often banded together in their own evil alliances. Episodes featured natural disasters, alien invasions, and philosophical dilemmas, all solved with teamwork and a whole lot of cheesy dialogue. But beneath the simplicity was a powerful concept. These characters weren't competing for screen time. They were coexisting, strategizing, and occasionally rescuing each other from certain doom. Super Friends proved that crossover storytelling could be serialized and interconnected. It laid the groundwork for everything from Batman, the animated series, to the DCAU and even the MCU. It wasn't just a cartoon. It was the animated equivalent of an epic comic book event, every single week. Number 5. Fred and Barney Meet the Thing, 1979. In what is widely considered one of the most baffling cartoon crossovers of all time, Fred and Barney Meet the Thing took two properties that had absolutely nothing in common and mashed them together anyway. On one side, you had Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble in their usual prehistoric hijinks. On the other, you had Marvel's rock-skinned superhero The Thing as a teenage boy who could transform with magic rings. No, really. This Saturday morning cartoon didn't feature any actual interaction between the two shows. Instead, it alternated segments. But the title and branding strongly implied a shared universe. Kids expected to see Fred riding a dinosaur while Ben Grimm punched meteors. Instead, they got two very different worlds shoved into one time slot with theme music that somehow tried to connect them. Despite the confusion, this programming block is now remembered for its sheer absurdity. Marvel fans were baffled by the Thing's teenage alter ego, Benji Grimm, and Flintstones fans were left wondering why a superhero from the future was suddenly part of their favorite caveman comedy. Still, it was a crossover experiment unlike anything else. Before the days of cinematic multiverses, Fred and Barney Meet the Thing gave kids a chaotic taste of what it meant to smash worlds together, whether they belonged or not. Number 4. The Addams Family on Scooby-Doo, 1972. Before the Addams Family received their own animated series, they made a delightfully creepy guest appearance in the new Scooby-Doo movies. In this episode, Scooby and the gang stumble upon the Addams' Gothic mansion, only to find themselves wrapped up in a mystery involving missing children, secret passageways, and an unusually helpful butler named Lurch. What made this crossover so perfect was the tonal harmony. While the Addamses were macabre and morbid, they were also humorous and lovable in their own way, much like Scooby-Doo's own formula of spooky fun. Morticia, Gomez, Wednesday, and Pugsley were all animated to match their live-action counterparts, and the original actors from the 1960s series even voiced their characters. The episode blurred the line between horror parody and classic mystery. Seeing Velma try to outthink Wednesday or Shaggy recoil in horror at Cousin It felt completely natural. Even Thing, the disembodied hand, got a few moments of weird glory. This crossover was so well received that it acted as a soft pilot for the 1973 Addams Family cartoon. It showed that Hanna-Barbera was capable of pulling from other networks' IP, adapting their tone, and making it work within the Scooby universe. Long before IP synergy became a billion-dollar strategy, this spooky team-up nailed it with a smile and a shiver. Number 3. Yogi's Gang, 1973. Following the success of Yogi's Ark, Hanna-Barbera launched Yogi's Gang, a full-fledged cartoon series that expanded the crossover premise into a weekly format. This show featured Yogi Bear captaining an eco-friendly flying Ark with a full crew of cartoon legends including Huckleberry Hound, Quick Draw McGraw, Snagglepuss, and more. Every episode tackled a moral lesson wrapped in absurd cartoon antics. Unlike previous cameos or segmented appearances, Yogi's Gang treated these characters as one cohesive unit. They shared duties on the ship, battled recurring villains like Mr. Waste and Lotta Litter, and frequently solved their problems with slapstick wisdom and teamwork. The show's central mission was to find the perfect place, free from greed, pollution, and hate, but it became a vehicle for moral storytelling. What made this crossover so special was its sincerity. While the humor remained broad, the series used its ensemble cast to tackle real-world issues like racism, dishonesty, and environmental destruction. And somehow, it still found room for pratfalls and banana cream pies. Yogi's Gang wasn't just about bringing together beloved characters, it was about uniting them under a shared mission. In doing so, it helped pioneer the idea that crossovers could have heart, purpose, and even a message. Before crossovers were cool, Yogi made them meaningful. Number 2. The Superman-Aquaman Hour of Adventure, 1967. Long before Super Friends, the Superman-Aquaman Hour of Adventure brought multiple DC Comics heroes together into one action-packed anthology. Produced by Filmation, the show primarily focused on Superman and Aquaman in their respective 7-minute episodes, but it also featured other heroes like the Flash, Green Lantern, Hawkman, the Atom, and the Teen Titans. While the heroes rarely crossed over in full-length stories, they all appeared within the same programming block, sometimes interacting briefly or sharing thematic connections. For comic book fans in the 1960s, this was a revelation. Characters who once lived only in separate comic issues now animated side by side, creating the early foundation of a televised superhero universe. Each segment kept to its own tone. Aquaman fought underwater threats with Aqualad, while Superman saved Metropolis from aliens and robots. Number 1. The New Scooby-Doo Movies, 1972. No cartoon crossover series before the MCU came close to what the new Scooby-Doo movies accomplished. For 2 wild seasons, Hanna-Barbera's mystery-solving dog became the anchor for one of the strangest and most star-studded animated crossovers of all time. Each episode featured Scooby and the gang teaming up with a different celebrity or fictional character. The guest list was legendary. Batman and Robin, the Harlem Globetrotters, Don Knotts, the Addams Family, Phyllis Diller, Laurel and Hardy, and even Jerry Reed all joined the gang to solve spooky mysteries and unmask fake ghosts. Every episode followed the familiar Scooby-Doo formula, but the added presence of guest stars twisted the tone into strange, delightful chaos. Some guests played themselves. Others were animated versions of fictional characters. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it was completely unhinged. But it always felt like an event. Each week, you tuned in not just for the mystery, but to see who would walk out of the fog next. The new Scooby-Doo movies proved that crossovers weren't just gimmicks. They could elevate familiar shows into exciting experiments. Decades before cinematic universes took over the box office, before crossover franchises became the industry standard, these forgotten cartoon mashups laid the groundwork. From prehistoric team-ups to cosmic races, they broke the rules with joy and chaos. Which one do you remember? Which blew your mind? Hit like, subscribe, and drop your favorite forgotten crossover in the comments below.